He's got the blazer and the tie on, so that's good. That's a good sign straight away. But oh no, he doesn't have the brown brogues. He's got those stupid little kind of like deck shoes. They look like a kind of exaggerated pair of Sambas, the big massive gummy white soles on them that all your middle class dads that are heading, for the 19th hole with their work colleagues on a Sunday afternoon seem to wear. But then at the same time, he's probably not had a chance to get fitted for the brown brogues. And did Parag Marath and Andrew Kavanagh and their little posse not wear those as they were walking around the exterior of Ibrox a few weeks back? This whole kind of sinister sports casual look of the feral venal businessman. So he's in keeping with the new ownership. That's not a problem. And he's walking past the picture of Walter Smith. He's walking past the portrait of Walter Smith without genuflecting. That's terrible, totally disrespectful. Oh no, but he's no genuflecting. So for a Rangers manager, that's absolutely spot on. And the facial hair, no facial hair at Ibrox. Why has he got the facial? Oh no, it's the facial hair is in the style of John Gregg, 1972 European Cup Winners' Cup winning captain. So that's absolutely fine in terms of the facial hair. A bit unfair that he's got that big, kind of mop of extra hair that he's flopping about all the time, boasting while he's sitting next to poor Patrick Stewart, who's totally sans hair. Let me just stick up for the baldies there. But as the whole kind of kerfuffle's going on, as the MCs putting the journals and the hacks in their place and telling them how the questions are going to work, he's sitting there quite cool, calm and collected, taking the time to pour himself a wee glass of water, as if he doesn't have a care in the world, as if nothing's going to ruffle him. But then he starts pouring a glass of water for Kevin Thelwell next to him. You're the man here. You're the boss. Lay down a marker here. Hit him over the head with the bottle of water. But don't be, you're Rangers top man now. You're Rangers head coach, manager, really, aren't you? That's not what we like to see. That's not what we like to see for the Rangers manager. And then it has to be said, during the course of the press conference, Kevin Thelwell, our new sporting director, was the most impressive, probably. He didn't say as much. It was Russell Martin, the new head coach, that was being asked most of the questions. But I felt as if Kevin Thelwell actually come across more kind of on point. He wasn't just doing the blue sky thinking. There wasn't any airy-fairy use of the jargon that everybody at that table seemed to be using. It was on point. It was, kind of well calibrated. He was explaining exactly what was expected of him and everybody else at Rangers. He came across like a bit of a prick as well. He's got that. If you've been to Liverpool, you know this whole thing about the cheeky scouser. There's a lot of garbage. They're no funnier or less funny than people from Glasgow. They feel exactly the same about football as people from Glasgow. It's a religion. It's a very serious subject down there, so we can relate to them. And he had that same kind of Steven Gerrard energy, like I'll stab you in the front kind of energy. Did Thelwell's. He's here to win things. He's the kind of guy we want at our club, but I wouldn't have him in the house, whereas I nearly called it straight. This is the problem. I keep going to call him Chris Martin. Now listen, I know what you're thinking. Oh, like, very good. You're one of the old baldies who, it's can't handle the fact that he's lost it and his best days are behind him if it ever had any. And you're trying to talk about all the trendy music you're into, no realising that it was only trendy in the late 80s. And I'm into the Pixies. I love the special, AKA the two-tone stuff and Radiohead, even though the middle class wank for a lot of people. But it's just the thing that you do is you slag Coldplay, you slag Chris Martin, lead singer Coldplay, for being boring, don't you? But it's not that. It's Chris Martin scored the winner, 88th minute. No Chris Martin for Coldplay. That would have made him interesting. But he scored the winner against Slovenia in a World Cup qualifier. Was it 2017? I was at the game. It was a Sunday night, game at Hampden, and. But that's Russell Martin's last ever game for Scotland. Russell Martin's playing defence, Chris Martin's playing up front. Two guys born in England, the English accents and that, playing for Scotland. So that's very confusing. It's no because I'm trying to say Russell Martin's, but I haven't called him Steve Martin. That would be really bad. But it's Russell Martin. He is a guy you would have in the house. He comes across like a really lovely fella. He comes across in his press conference, I would say, pretty much the way I would come across in a press conference, which is, got a lot to say, but just perhaps as a kind of boring. So it seems a lovely fella. He's talking like, 10 more minutes, Mum. What was it? He's not the most inspirational, but I mean Chuck Noll, the Pittsburgh Steelers, won they 4 Super Bowls in like 3 years or whatever it was back in the 70s, and Chuck Noll was famously really bad at team talks, and anytime he tried to do an inspirational team talk, the team actually just kind of laughed at him. It's not about your personality, the way you come across, maybe even to your team. Sometimes just can you make it work? Can you pick the right players and can you... So that was how you doing, folks? This is your Fatek. This time last week we thought we were getting a 39-year-old midfielder from Real Madrid, and this time this week we've got a 39-year-old head coach from the Dole, from the queue at the job centre. It's no Real Madrid, it's Russell Martin. It's no Rangers manager, it's Rangers head coach. The RM thing in there, working hard. This is your Fatek podcast. The Fatek podcast, the course of antibiotics for the poison at the heart of Rangers that Graham Spears. It was Graham Spears that said something about there being a poison at the heart. Well, I'm the course of antibiotics for that. You just maybe in a couple of weeks, any more than 4 weeks, it stops working. You just go back and see your doctor, but it'll clear up. It's absolutely fine. I'm sponsored by Gersnet, of course. Gersnet during the season when Rangers are actually playing, it's on Friday YouTube channel, Gersnet YouTube channel, live 9 p.m, live 9:30 p.m, the flagship show on a Sunday night, live on the YouTube channel, but it's also available across a whole other range of streaming platforms and all that kind of stuff, because I'm also sponsored by The Algorithm, or maybe the MC5, The Algorithm or the MC5. MC5, a group, a kind of counterculture, America, late 60s, early 70s. I don't know anything about them. I didn't know anything about them. I don't really know much more about them now until a couple of weeks ago. And the MC5, I'd say it stands for Motor City 5, so I always thought they came from Detroit, Motor City, Detroit, Michigan. But I think they're actually from Lincoln Park, which is a city just right next to, it's a city in its own right, but it's the kind of outskirts of Detroit. But the Motor City 5, MC5 they're known as, and I've seen them mentioned in music documentaries when people are talking about the origins of punk or the origins of heavy metal, I think, as well, maybe new metal even. And they talk about the MC5, how they were really, countercultural. All right, that was fine, the whole kind of hippie thing maybe in the late 60s into the early 70s, but they were hardcore. They just didn't get it. They would swear and things like that, and their music's quite mad, quite intense for the time. And I've got to be honest, there's sometimes just anything, I'm just flicking through the telly or I'm watching these documentaries and they're doing all these references and showing you wee clips of these bands that are just influences, but they're not the main focus of the documentary. And sometimes I'll think it's Captain Beefheart. I'll get confused with Captain Troutmass replica and all that, because I just get confused because they've got the same kind of jazzy shirts and that manic, look at us being really intense guitar style. And it's great stuff. It's fantastic, but I didn't really know their work. Didn't know their work at all. And the point of this is, if you've been unfortunate enough to watch these pods, thanks very much, through the course of the season just past, at various points, usually when folk are saying it's been a write-off of a season for Rangers, this has been terrible, it's been the worst season ever, and I'm like, we're still in Europe. It's still in Europe up March, up until the kind of Easter holidays. We're still playing European football, and it was meaning it was really busy, particularly if you're trying to do a podcast, previewing every game, and then a podcast reacting to every game, and then indeed podcasts in between to deal with all the fallout and stuff like that, which I love doing. I mean, it's not exactly a hindrance to me, but just as an example of how busy Rangers still were, how our season was still, being involved in Europe's a massive thing, and it was keeping things really ticking over as a supporter. I would say I've not even had a chance to watch that Trash Theory documentary about the KLF, not the KLF, the KLF, the ancients of Moo Moo, Justified and their ancient and the driving ice cream van, all that kind of stuff. There's this Trash Theory, is a fantastic channel on YouTube. If you don't know it, you should check it out. Does lots of music documentaries, and I went through a period, that was maybe like 2 years ago, where I watched 2. And they were really good, and I thought, I'm going to what the guy's got done massive amounts, a massive catalogue of. He'll do a video on a particular song, or another one on a particular group, and one's on whole genres of music and stuff like that. It's fantastic stuff, really, really interesting. And you have to watch them though, because he can do graphics. It's not like this garbage you're watching just now. The guy actually knows how to run a YouTube channel. And there'll be lots of quotes and that going up on the screen. He doesn't narrate those quotes, so you have to watch it. There's little clips of the groups that he's talking about as well, so you have to watch it as well as listen to it. And I saw that there was one about the KLF at some point. I thought, I need to watch that. KLF, man, I love the KLF. And it wasn't until I watched that documentary, and eventually, after we played Hibs, we drew 2 each at Easter Road. I was dealing with the fallout for that, and I thought, that's it. Our season's finished. I'm going to chill now, to unwind here. It's been intense. But you can't, of course, because all the management, the ownership stuff's all simmering in the background, which leads to who's going to be the new manager of Rangers. Turns out he's a head coach. But that's all going on at the centre. But you're kind of kidding yourself on that you're going to relax, you're going to switch off. And so I made a point of sitting down to watch this video. And as I go through, it's a fantastic, I thoroughly recommend it. Trash Theory is the channel. Just put in Trash Theory KLF and up it will come. It's about 35 minutes long or something. And during the course of that documentary, it explains that the KLF actually withdrew all their music from the public. They basically hid all their music for years. And I'm thinking, is that what it is? That's why I was suddenly desperate to watch something about the KLF, because they'd actually taken all the music off Spotify. They became the K Foundation. They like to do these kind of stunts and all that. But it was art. It was countercultural. It was revolutionary stuff. They burnt £1 million. They just sat and burnt an actual £1 million, and it certainly gets people talking as a work of art. What a statement! But so they would do these kind of things, but they'd taken all the music off all the streaming platforms of Spotify, stuff like that. And I thought, maybe that's why I was desperate to watch this thing about the KLF. And it was great, but what happened was when I went onto my phone, when I went onto YouTube, and to cast it up onto the television so I could sit and relax and watch it, the first thing YouTube brought up was the MC5. Kick Out the Jams. Kick Out the Jams by MC5. That's their most famous song. I didn't even know that. I thought, that's that mob for this. Is that Trout Mask Replica? Oh no, that's it's MC5, and it's from a TV show they were on a music show in the late 60s or the early 70s in America. And I thought, I'll just watch this. I'll just watch to see what this is all about, because I'm warming up. I'm trying to get away from football. This day, whatever it was, the Tuesday after our last game of the season, I'm trying to have a break for the football, so I'll watch this music video to warm up for a music documentary. And Kick Out the Jams, this was their most famous song, and it was really good. I did recognise it, and I thought, I have seen this before. But I watched the KLF documentary, and the guy in Trash Theory is only allowed to give you little clips, obviously, of all the songs involved. And I was like, oh, I love What Time Is Love. KLF, What Time Is Love. I love that song. Absolutely love that tune. And it's from a time that I used to actually go, clubbing and stuff like that. I had hair and everything. So I was like, I'm going to, as soon as this is finished, I'm going to, find out if I can hear the whole of that song. So onto YouTube, just keyed it in, What Time Is Love, KLF, and on comes somebody's, uploaded the whole song, What Time Is Love. And at the very start of that song, I'd completely forgotten. The very start of that song, it starts with, it is time to kick out the jams, motherfuckers. It's the MC5. It starts with a sample of the MC5 with their really infamous introduction of their infamous or most famous song. Because they would actually say with them, every time they played it live, kick out the jam, motherfuckers. It caused, they had it on record on one of their records, and the record stores in America wouldn't have that at all. This is, we're talking, let's say, late 60s here. There's no way they were going to have that, and they banned them, and then they ended up banning their whole record. Any group on that whole record label that had that was in this chain of music stores, they pulled it, so the record label had to drop MC5, but they were fine. But it's really, really famous, and I thought, how? That's obviously why I've gone on to watch a documentary about the KLF, but before I've even keyed that in, before I've even typed that in, it's brought up the song that is sampled at the beginning of the song that I hadn't even decided I was eventually going to watch after I'd watched that documentary. Now, I know the algorithm, I know YouTube and all that, you think it's reading your mind, and it turns out no. For example, I get sent a clip from a Jason Statham film, I'm like, what the I'm not a Jason Statham fan. Why? And I thought, oh no, wait a minute. I consider myself a heist film fan. No, don't I? I consider myself a heist film fan. And Jason Statham, I watched a few weeks ago. Is it Wrath of Man? It's also a Guy Ritchie film, and I think I hate Guy Ritchie. But it turns out I don't, because I quite enjoyed that film. And there's lots of, he works for a security company, he's a security corps van type scenario. Very Heat, my favourite film, Heat, 1995. LA Crime Saga I'm always talking about, so I thought, it's no mistake, that's why it sent me Jason Statham. I was watching something I maybe watched on Netflix or Sky Movies, and that's all through Virgin Media, which is from my emails through, so that'll be It's no a mystery as to why YouTube algorithm has thrown up the reference to that film, but there was MC5, nothing. I mean, it'd been years since I saw them mention a music documentary on the television, on like the terrestrial channels. I had never looked up MC5. I'd forgotten who they were, what their name was, anything. And up this comes in the very day, and then Saturday night, just past, like you, I'm watching the Champions League final, and just before the Champions League final kicks off, Linkin Park. Linkin Park are playing the Champions League final. They're on the pitch of the Allianz Arena, and folk did that. Why they did that thing? Everybody goes, oh, since when did it turn into the Super Bowl? It's been doing that for years. I mean, Alicia Keys played the San Siro, which was that was a 2016 Champions League final, the second of the Madrid derbies that they had in the Champions League final. Alicia Keys is out there doing New York, which is what Alexander Chefrin got elected president of UEFA on the ticket of one day having the European Cup final in New York, in a different continent, not in Europe. So that's getting off the point there. But it's Linkin Park. I'm thinking, oh, Linkin Park, MC5, I feel Linkin Park. Oh, I'm just putting it all together. I knew they were inspired to be. No, but so I looked up stuff about Linkin Park. I knew that Linkin Park's lead singer had killed himself about 8 years ago. It turned out they'd only reformed. So they're a female lead singer now, but they'd only reformed with this female lead singer in September last year. So good for them, well done. And here they were playing the Champions League final before the teams come onto the parks, and that's absolutely great. But it turned Linkin Park a bit different. Their name references Lincoln Park in Santa Monica, which is an actual park, which isn't even called Lincoln Park anymore. I think it's called after somebody else now. And the only reason, and I thought it's a new metal way of spelling Lincoln Park, removing the I. Is it Lincoln, Linkn or something like that? They spell it, trendy, a bit after my time, Lincoln Park. But it was to get to prove that it's a bit after my time. The reason they changed the name was to get the domain name out to themselves. Groups were forming when domain names were a thing. So that was just, Linkin Park, it's really coincidental. And I then watched the Champions League most dominant display ever in the final. I love my European Cup finals. I'm obsessed with it. Does it take Freud to work out why? Milan 1994, who were referenced extensively during that Champions League final the other night. That was the greatest display for me. Sorry, Milan 1994, they beat Barcelona 4-0. And it was, here's PSG, here's Paris Saint-Germain. Without Mbappe, without Messi, without Neymar, suddenly they've found a way to win the Champions League. The only team ever to win that Champions League final by 4 clear goals. Real Madrid beating Eintracht Frankfurt 7-3 at Hampden. That's 4 goals. You had Milan won it 4-0 against Steaua Bucharest, the 1989 European Cup final as it still was then. Milan beating Barcelona 4-0 in 1994. Only the last time that somebody had scored 5 goals in the final of the European Cup of the Champions League was 1962. Benfica beating Real Madrid 5-3 in the Olympic Stadium in Amsterdam. So it was a quite incredible performance, which kind of broke my heart a bit because it was sports washing of the lowest order. It was a murderous, horrible, blood-stained petrodollar regime from Qatar that has been pumping billions, literally billions, I think it's 2 billion, since about 2011 into Paris Saint-Germain. And you couldn't deny that the football was sublime. The football was absolutely sublime. It's not as entertaining for me, perhaps, as Milan in 1994, but for an older generation, it would be as entertaining as Real Madrid at Hampden in the 18th of May 1960. No, but this was there's no getting away from it. It was the most dominant display ever by a side in the European Cup final, the Champions League final, and it was down to the algorithm, but Neymar and Messi had won the Champions League final before, and that was against an Italian team in Germany, and Luis Enrique was the manager then. 10 years before, Luis Enrique was the Barcelona manager, and Messi and Neymar and Luis Suarez were in his team, and Neymar scored as they beat Juventus 3-1 in Berlin in the final 10 years ago, and here was Luis Enrique without Neymar. Mbappe thought the algorithm was go to Real Madrid. Go to Real Madrid, that's the algorithm. I can't win this Champions League with Paris Saint-Germain. I know we keep winning Ligue 1, but the Qatari regime does not. Winning Ligue 1 is not enough. They need to bring the Champions League to Qatar via Paris Saint-Germain, you see their tracksuits are all the kind of maroon colour of the Qatari national team, the Qatari flag. It needed to be the Champions League, and Mbappe wants the Champions League, but he wasn't winning it with PSG. I'll go to Real Madrid, who won it in 2022, and he won it in 2024, and they won it more times than anybody else. The Champions League just seemed to fall into Real Madrid's lap. It was saying, Mbappe, I'll go there, I'm bound to win it. No, you got the algorithm wrong. Luis Enrique got it right, and that's what happens when you. It's a lesser form of sports washing, obviously, with American health insurance investors, American realtors, American equity fund managers, hedge fund managers, whatever they are, that kind of horrible type of banking that are at Rangers just now. It's maybe they are sports washing. I think they're just here to make a profit, I would imagine. But we're all celebrating it last Friday because that's what you want. That's the model. That's how you get success these days. If you don't have the money yourselves, if you don't have people who support your club, who have the funds, you need to get the third party. You need to get outsiders who come in, and it's that kind of model where they will throw the money at it, and they will get rid of players that you don't think they should get rid of, and they'll bring in managers you don't think they should bring in, and they'll call them head coaches, and it will get there. And that's what you've got with Russell Martin. I did not want Russell Martin as head coach of Rangers. I said it was this whole infatuation we have these days with the modern type of management. We're thinking not because Russell Martin gets sacked by Southampton, because Russell Martin got Southampton promoted, we think he's Vincent Kompany. Because Vincent Kompany got Burnley promoted from the Championship into the English Premier League, then he got them relegated, and then he got the Bayern Munich job, and then he won the Bundesliga. But today I'm thinking, well, he did win the Bundesliga. A guy who, I mean, and Vincent Kompany did win the Bundesliga with a side he got promoted from the Championship in England, which is what Russell Martin did. And although he gets sacked well before the end of the season, Russell Martin, because of the terrible start he had in the English Premier League last season as Southampton boss, which is one win, I think, maybe 2 other draws in his first 16 games. He comes to Rangers with me now, hoping he can do the Vincent Kompany kind of thing. Can he get? Now listen, we remember, I'm talking about seeing Russell Martin playing at Hampden for Scotland. Another thing that's no helping Russell Martin is him playing at Hampden with Rangers, and I was at that game as well. Up the other end, I was that night. Or that afternoon, another Sunday game. It was in lunchtime, wasn't it? A midday kick-off, I think. And it'd already gone pretty badly. It was the year after. This 2017 I saw him playing his last game for Scotland, and this was 2018, which would not be his last game for Rangers, unfortunately, many people thought, including Russell Martin, who was saying today that he wasn't fit enough at that time, and the club themselves were in a terrible situation. But he set up that goal for Callum McGregor, didn't he? Turns into a 4-0 rout. Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden against Celtic. We're already a goal down, and a cross comes in, and Russell Martin, centre half, just manages to contact the ball in such a way that he kills it and just rolls it out to not even at the edge of the box. He was much closer to the penalty spot than I realised. Callum McGregor for that finish. I thought it was from the outside the box on the day, but not. He curls it into quite easily because Russell Martin has teed up the shot from it's 2-0 to Celtic. They're going to win the game 4-0. That's what people remember. They also played in the game that we lost. Was it 2 weeks later? 5-0. We lost at Parkhead, and it should have been 10. That's one of those days. It was a horrible, horrible day. It's one of the all-time lows in our history. Celtic win the league by beating us 5-0 at Parkhead, but I still can't help remembering the fact that I thought this is going to be 10. They're going to put 10 past us. Why they stopped at 5, I have no idea. Jack Allen had a couple of cracking saves, but Celtic just definitely took their foot off the gas that day, and I'll never know why they did. But Russell Martin also plays in that game, but he gets remembered, I think, primarily, certainly amongst friends of mine, as just teeing up Callum McGregor. A woeful mistake in a Scottish Cup game against Celtic at Hampden that led to Rangers losing 4-0. Who else made a terrible mistake while playing for Rangers in a massive Scottish Cup game at Hampden against Celtic that led directly to a Celtic goal, which led directly to Celtic beating us 4-0. It was a 1969 Scottish Cup final, and it was Sir Alec bloody Ferguson. That's who. So he's never mind, apart from the fact that the old wife's tale about bad footballers make great managers, Russell Martin wasn't that bad a footballer. He was just bad in the 6 months he was at Rangers. Apart from that, guys who make massive total boobs and Old Firm Scottish Cup games at Hampden against Celtic turn into just one of the greatest managers of all time. So don't panic about it. It's going to be absolutely fine. Happy Pride Month, folks. Happy Pride Month. I've got my Bronski Beat album. That's me done my bit. I also watched Chicago, the musical. That's me doing my bit. Not well, Bob Fosse wasn't gay in that, but some of the boys that wrote the stuff were definitely gay. But I'm not going to let. I watched Chicago. I was just doing it because I've told you before. I'm doing it. I've tried the European club finals. Have helped me warm down for the football, but I'm also warming up for my summer relaxation by getting on to all the Academy Award winning movies, the best movies at the Oscars, all the ones I haven't seen. I've seen all the ones in the. Was it the 1990s? Not the ones for 2010s, but I've got little ones. I've still never seen Driving Miss Daisy, for example. I think I've got to buy that if I want to see that one. Just what I can say. I've seen them all, but going through the ones I can. Chicago won it in 2002. I was in Chicago, and I went to a musical. I went to see Wicked. My wife took me to see Wicked when I was in Chicago. I felt as if I should really have gone to. But so I watched the musical. I watched the film Chicago that won the best movie at the Oscars in 2003. So I watched that the other day. But I'm not going to let that influence this podcast in any way as I discuss Rangers' new ownership, Rangers' new management structure, and all that jazz. So yeah, last week it's worked out well for me. There's this a metaphor I'll set up as I go a walk around my local area. There's somebody who's obviously getting the guys in to do up their garden, and because there's a whole big pile of slabs just outside somebody's back door. A big massive pile of slabs because they're on the pavement thing, and the big bags that only the trucks can bring, that can lower into your garden for you. And obviously, must have nice gravel or stuff like that, nice pebbles or things. And they've got the roller, the big massive, just old school. Your grandpa would have one in his garden, or a wee version, but you get these proper big massive. It's a big steel kind of ball type thing. It's a roller, big massive roller, but it's just a two-handled thing to push it, and it would break your foot if it went over your foot at all. It's there to flatten the grass, and there's a kind of wedge-shaped bit of slab, a broken slab has been shoved in underneath it as it sits outside this person's house, just so it doesn't roll and cause any damage. So it doesn't roll and break a curbstone or break somebody's foot. Is the But I thought that's a perfect. It's been out there for a few days, and I've been waiting for news on the head coach, who we're going to get as head coach at Rangers. I thought that's a perfect metaphor, perfect visual metaphor. We are ready. We are just ready to crush everything in front of us, get us rolling. I've got scorched earth. Let's flatten the earth now and start building the new Rangers dominance in Scottish football. But just that slab that's in there, that wedge-shaped thing that's in to stop it rolling forward, that's us no having the head coach at the last bit. But now I feel as if it's just because everybody feels so flat, and it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. I did that podcast last week trying to explain my position on the takeover, why I wasn't ready yet to be super excited and be super cheery about it. I was excited, but in a really, really deep way. It was just taking us so long to get to that point. A lot of negativity coming from the stands towards other Rangers supporters, from Rangers supporters, saying that we're happy clappers and we shouldn't back the club and we should boycott the club and stuff like that. Things like that have happened over the last few years, when we've had Rangers supporters in place on the board doing everything they can. And so I felt I was going to have to explain why I had this attitude towards the takeover last Friday. But I don't have to now, because everybody just... I'll get him to burn down Ibrox. Russell Martin, I'm not going back. This season's... This season you're not going back. You don't have to go back a season's back. Or do you mean next season? You're not going back. It's the algorithm. Don't worry about it. The algorithm is going to get you. That press conference, we'll start with the press conference. I've got a whole big long explanation, unfortunately for you, but that press conference today, it's kind of herd mentality. It's herd mentality, kind of herd instinct, as in, I heard he's too dogmatic. I heard he gets sacked because he wasn't dogmatic enough. I heard he's very good he's not very good at press conferences, and I heard he's the best manager in the game. He's the best, and just makes players feel that they want to lay down their life from. I heard he loves to dominate possession, but he can't actually execute possession. He's got a lot of the ball without knowing what to do with it. And I heard he loves quick transitions and no messing about. Just get somebody who's got the bravery to go spare and get the ball in the back of the net. I heard he got Southampton promoted in the back of a 25-game unbeaten run that their fans absolutely loved, and finished with winning at Wembley against Leeds. Phenomenal. Versus, I heard he got Southampton promoted by the skin of their teeth via the playoffs when it should really have been automatic, and it was totally underwhelming at that time in the Championship. I've heard he's got all these airy-fairy beliefs. He's a vegan. He believes in veganism as if that's a real thing. He believes in, he's a Buddhist. He's a member of the Green Party. To sort him out about that. Green Party in Scotland, very different from the Green Party in England. And he does charities and stuff. That is woke nonsense. Versus he was raised by an abusive gambling junkie father who did jail time, and he's harder than you'll ever be. And Russell Martin is so hard that he knows real strength, true strength is charity and compassion. He grew up fast, just like our team needs to. I'm perfectly willing to give the guy a chance, and I think it's even. It's got me back in an equilibrium. His style today in the press conference backed up the assertion that he wasn't the most scintillating. But this is coming from me, obviously. You've switched this pod off ages ago because I'm so bloody boring. But he was asked about who he's going to bring his backroom team, and what was the guy's name? Have I got it written down here somewhere? The guy he was talking about. Let me see if I can find Matt Gill. Aye. Matt Gill's his assistant manager. He's been assistant manager. He was manager of MK Dons. He was manager of Swansea. He was manager of Southampton before he was sacked in December. Was Russell Martin, but Matt Gill, he said he's been his assistant manager for most of those gigs, and he's a bit more calm, a bit more introverted. Just thought, what is Matt Gill? Is he a spirit level in a tracksuit? This is Matt Gill. I met him at a My Bloody Valentine concert in 1992 when Russell Martin would have been 7-year-old, so it doesn't really work that. But any time I get myself a bit excited, I just pick up Matt, and he just gets me back on the level. He flattens me right out. He just evens me right out my equilibrium, and that gets back balanced. Rhys Owens is his physical performance coach, and he's going to have to get the guys the players at Ibrox, fit enough in a certain way. No, he's going to liaise with the current medical team and fitness team people at Rangers to get the players built for the kind of way that Russell Martin wants to play football. But I'm going a bit OTT about that. It was about how boring he was at the press conference. That's a bit evil in my part. The guy's up for it. He seems like a very genuine character. He knocked back other jobs. He was saying he knocked back the chance for other job interviews. It was widely rumoured that Leicester City wanted him. Leicester City, who've just gone back down to the Championship, and they're getting investigated about, dodgy money and what have you, and spending beyond their means and that kind of thing. But I think that'd be quite an attractive offer. Definitely his speciality, but he seemed to particularly want to come to Rangers, and that's really good. That's a good thing to know. That definitely works for him. I can't pretend to be super psyched, but I'm actually quite enjoying the way it's evened itself out. The hysteria of last Friday, with nothing matters, get out there and celebrate in the streets, versus yesterday's. It was Thursday night. It was almost certain it was going to be Russell Martin. That's when the backlash started. Then he gets appointed today, and some of the stuff it's just all online stuff. It's your knee-jerk types. That was so completely the opposite of what we got last Friday. That I just feel kind of it's all balanced now. We're all evened out. We are all subject to the Matt Gill treatment. Look, last Friday, or my reaction last Saturday, if you folk get in touch, going, you don't seem very cheery. You don't seem you can up for it. Most of you actually get exactly what I'm talking about. It was strange watching the Champions League final on Saturday night with two of our ex-managers and the TNT team on the pitch. You had Ali McCoist there, you'd Steven Gerrard, with all the references to previous Munich finals, just making you think about Basil Bowley, Trevor Francis, Robert Pritz, Stefan Klos, Sergio Perini, and the whole thing. The first time winners, every time the final's been, that's 5 times when the final's been in Munich, be the Olympic Stadium or the Allianz Arena, and it's a first time winner every time. First team club, which still should have been us in 1993. And when it was nice, but back in 1993, we had Olympic Marseille, no like PSG, we other kind of theocracy, fascist, horrible sports washing money. Back in 1993, it was Bernard Tapie's Olympic Marseille, who knew how to win a European Cup clean, knew how to do it totally properly. That was totally legitimately. They were the good old days. But we should totally have beaten them. We should have, you know what happened. But I was thinking how strange it is that that's the last Champions League final this decade and next that won't feature Rangers, because that's how delusional these Rangers fans are, isn't it? That's, oh my God, they're totally kidding themselves on. They're so gullible, and there's absolutely no way. I'm utterly terrified as a Celtic fan that the domestic tide is turning in Scotland, because I'm laughing at them for thinking it'll be so much better than it actually is. But that was the reaction of Celtic fans Saturday, Sunday, and so forth. They were terrified that this takeover was going to be every bit as brilliant as most Rangers fans seem to think it was going to be on Friday. And then it suddenly changed, didn't it? It suddenly changed the moment we appointed Russell Martin. But that's PSG and Man City got their Champions League. That's Qatar and Abu Dhabi used our sport to wash themselves. I don't know if Saudi Arabia needs Newcastle to win the Champions League, or does having all these kind of world-class players in their own domestic league get the job done for them. Remember, they beat Argentina in the last World Cup, didn't they? They won the World Cup, Argentina, so Saudi beat them. Maybe anyway, these blood-soaked petrodollar theocracies who supply Donald Trump's transport and backhanders were always so much more sickening a prospect for me, when Dave, no longer involved King, started mooting Saudi Arabian dough. I almost beheaded myself at the thought that kind of and the other major investment option these days, that's the US of A, which of course Donald and JD Vance are trying to turn into a blood-stained petrodollar theocracy, and many would say it has been that for decades. But I love the USA. I totally love the States. It really is a home freedom in many ways, as well as being really oppressive in so many other ways. But you can be damn sure Trump is incapable of love. Our guys, our new owners, they'll have made all their money long before even Trump's first term, so we can exclude them from the current desire for fascism being shown by the Republican Party through Donald Trump. But like any businessmen, they'll be dodgy. But in terms of today's football ownership models, this is a dog's bollocks. It really is. The 49ers Enterprises and Andrew Kavanagh is probably as good as you can get if you have to go to a third party, if you have to go to an outside source. And we did try. We basically had as close as we can get to a workable fan ownership model at Rangers. I think these days we need one day for the club to truly be in the hands of the fans. But if you can't manage that, it's got to be directors who are fans, and nobody wanted that apparently. So, and of course, when has issues of ownership ever been a problem at Rangers? I saw that kind of get on board wankers were out in force last week. The same bears who wanted you to hate Rangers last season, ignore the Derby form, ignore the European quarter-final. They were now brooking no kind of grey areas and eschewing any hints of subtlety when it came to the new owners. David Murray, a Scot who brought pretty much all the best days of our lives for 23 years. He must never be mentioned again. But a score of Americans we've just met, they're our saviours and our heroes and must be worshipped. Yet this is the get real crowd. Wake up, grow up. Crowd, the grow up. When it came to the current boards, when it came to James Tavernier, when it came to applauding our team off the park, don't be a happy clapper. Wake up, they're not going to do anything for you. But now they wanted you to get out the stars and stripes and be demonstrably ecstatic because there might be Tims watching. The Rangers fans that told you 2 minutes ago you were a happy clapper, and part of the problem, if you supported Rangers, our team, were now telling you you're not happy enough, no clapping enough, and that these strangers who, to be fair, have fought out the best part of £100 million to take us over, are to be welcomed like gods they are. The gods they are to Rangers, because, of course, they won't want more than tuppence halfpenny and a slap in the back in return for their investment. Grow up, wake up. even just for a second, so we can all enjoy this properly. That's all it's about for me, folks. I just want to enjoy it properly. The obvious aspect for me of the reaction on Friday to the takeover is we do this all the time, even in 2012, especially in 2012. We're not taking on board the potential or the potential downsides. In 2012, it was the devastation that you couldn't get anybody to actually say this is. Every Rangers supporter immediately went to, well, the club is the support. The club is the support. I don't understand why anybody's saying we have to be a new club and all that. No, we're absolutely fine. We're absolutely fine. And I get it. That's what you've got to do in times of crisis. You've got to circle the wagons. You've got to push forward. But you end up getting the next 13 years, you still aren't allowed to say about the fact that 2012 affected us. It's got to be the current board and the current manager and the current players. They're the problem. They're the problem. And you end up going into the next 13 years from 2012 like a permanently explosive adult who hasn't dealt with childhood trauma. It's Simon Munnery, the comedian Simon Munnery, said that thing about so many people are willing to die for their art. Very few are willing to learn how to draw. No, and there's an American comedian. The guy is a Korean American. I think he's in the Crazy Rich Asians franchise, but he definitely he's on Jon Stewart Today Show with Jon Stewart. He presents that sometimes. Really funny guy, and he does a whole thing about MAGA. He's got MAGA friends, and they want to, they're willing to die for. I'll die for this country. And he said, "Oh, you could just learn maths or math, as the Americans always call it. You could just go and learn the maths. It will help you, get better trade and better." But no, they don't want to do that. It's that kind of mindset, which it's all about. I want a hysterical reaction positively, or I want a hysterical reaction negatively, but I don't want to do whatever's going to require to get us from the negative to the positive. Just get in there and support the team, and people do that, and they're venting because it's not been fun watching the team over the past few years, but it goes too far. As far as I'm concerned, the big thing for me about the reaction last Friday was the worshipping of these Americans when you are the hero. You are the saviour. You, my fellow Blue Nose, deserve all the praise for getting us to this point. This consortium, Marat and Kavanagh, are being allowed to buy our club by us. We are allowing them to take over our club. And anybody who was at that game against Hearts, it get postponed because of the snow. It was 0-0. We're both in the Championship. That when we were getting rid of the fat man for Newcastle, and that absolute bedlam. The idea that Rangers are like any other club, where they can just come in and take us over without our permission, was blown out the window, blown out the door that night. We're allowing this to happen. We did this. We saved Rangers, and we did it for 13 years. When these kind of fly-by-nights, financial opportunist tourists were nowhere to be seen. No, just where were these kind of guys in 2011, 2012, when we really needed somebody like that? Before you start hero worshipping them and celebrating them, let's just let's get that straight. I need to get quite emotional about stuff. Let's get that straight, and we can progress healthily, long term, maturely, in a lasting way. The wrong reactions create problems further down the line. For you, as much as Rangers, so many of our fans and gin selling kind of ex-players come pundits can't even enjoy our European accomplishment of last season because they've pinned their colours too early to that this season's a write-off mass. This season's a disaster. You get to the point where Chris Boyd is telling us getting to a European quarter-final is irrelevant, when it's everything I live for to do well in Europe for Rangers. But aye. And then there's basic manners, as I say. Where were these people in 2011, 2012, even 2015? It's about thanking the right people. It's a difficult thing to explain my position last week. I tried a painful analogy about a model airplane I'd made and then smashed off the ball because I'd got it finished, but the frustration of getting to the point of getting it finished just built up to the point where I smashed it up as soon as I'd He said that didn't really work. It's more like Timur Kitspai's celebration for Newcastle against Bolton Wanderers, where Kenny Dalglish was manager of Newcastle, and he'd the Georgian Timur Kitspai, and a Georgian scores in the Champions League final for the first time. I mean, we saw Kvaratskhelia, we saw him at Ibrox in the Champions League. There he was scoring in the final the other week to show he's a bit of a class act all round for PSG. But Timur Kitspai was a Georgian player. He ends up, he was at Newcastle, maybe he ended up at Dundee as well. And was a Cyprus manager at one point as well, I think. Or just Georgia, no, it was just Georgia national team manager. Maybe both. I think he's been both. But he scores a goal against Bolton Wanderers. He'd come off the bench, and he was still so mad at the fact that Kenny Dalglish, the Newcastle manager at the time, had left him at the starting 11, that he pits his foot through the advertising hoarding and kicks 7 shades. I mean, he's celebrating, obviously. It's scoring the goal, which was the winner, that let him do this, that lets the frustration come out, but it's all frustration. That's how I was feeling last week. It's the greatness of the finally getting this takeover, of us finally being back on kind of dry land. It was so emotional that to just be cheery, kind of, hey, about it, especially it's about the football. We haven't won anything yet in terms of football. We don't know if it's working yet. It seems to be very much the right direction, but it seemed a daft moment to be kind of cheerily celebrating. It's my missus has always been trim her whole life. She's always been just really thin and what have you. Not really thin, but she's didn't put a lot of weight on. Whatever. I'm the fat bastard. The thing is, we've been married for like 25, 26 years now, and I'm Oprah Winfrey, the Luther Vandross thing. I've just blown up, and occasionally managing to get the weight back off. So I'm like, just now, for example, I'm like 23.5 stone. So I'll just go for a few walks around the block. When you're that kind of weight, you just lay off the Mars bars for a week, and you go a walk around the block, have a good fart, and that's it. You've lost 2.5 stone, and folk will notice, and they'll come up. I've used this analogy before, and they'll say, "Oh, hey, Alec, you're looking well. Oh, that's brilliant." No, and it's she's no bothered. She wants me, lose weight and not die, basically. Or maybe she does. I don't know. Maybe she keeps buying the Mars bars. Oh, I see. But it's that thing where I think I shouldn't be getting credit for having being less morbidly obese. Maybe a bit of credit, when I actually get back to a normal weight. But it's more a case of what the hell was wrong with you for the past 10 years that you got yourself to this size, and somebody who's just the perfect weight or a really healthy weight their entire life get zero credit. Get zero credit. I mean, they live a happier life, and they'll get credit. Oh, you look great in that, the clothes or whatever like that. But it's like, you need to actually be a fat bastard. It was like that. It was like, because that's the praise for this takeover last week. It just didn't seem to. The praise was going to the wrong people. But this is the end of the journey, as far as I'm concerned. The celebration will take place with any football results that follow. This is the end of the journey. This is us just getting back to our status prior to kind of 2012, 2011. Aye. Some folk will be getting in touch saying, like these guys, the expertise they're bringing from 49ers, San Francisco 49ers, are sporting expertise, and what they've learned at Leeds, obviously, will be invaluable to us. That's a great asset, and there's no but about it. There's no but in there. I'm not disagreeing with that for a second. I did a bit in last Friday's pod just saying, when Parag Marath's statement got to the part about 49ers expertise will be used to help Rangers. That was the moment where I was like dropping my trousers, bending over, saying, take us now, guys. I said, I'm totally up for this takeover. But this is it. This is the moment we've waited for. This isn't just as kind of returning to dry land. I get that. This is us back home. It's not that there's a lack of excitement in my part. It's that the excitement's overwhelming, as it should be. This isn't a kind of either-or situation. This isn't the Yank billionaires versus parts of Hamilton. There would have been no Yank gazillionaires without parts of Hamilton. And I think anybody, they kind of get real crowd that start giving it up, but parts are going to get paid. All the guys who've sold their shares now, they're going to get paid. They're going to get paid. Well, what do you think these guys are here for? What do you think the American investors, a bunch of kind of heartless equity bankers, estate agents, and healthcare insurers from another continent are here to do? it's just been. Everyone kept telling me last season was a nightmare. Well, I fucking lived it. No, we all did. We all lived through that season. So it's to instantly become happy clappy now sounds kind of weird. It's like reacting to the reuniting with a long lost one, a long lost loved one, without tears. Just cheery. Oh, how you doing? As the Mister Domestic Dominance, lost at sea for 13 years and presumed dead, was welcomed back home by his family. Everyone just said yay and sat in front of the telly to enjoy the Great British Bake Off and asked Mr. Dominance if he'd mind sticking the kettle on. And no one thanked the emergency services who worked so hard and searched for so long to bring him home. That's the fans, us that stayed with the team through the last 13 years and the directors who. The Bears, and all that. So I'll just keep this going. Sorry. In fact, the reaction was so lacking in real emotion. Neighbours speculated as to why, for years, Mrs. Domestic Dominance had been seen leaving their Paisley Road home each weekend to watch Man City or Liverpool on the Isle of Sky Sports Sunday. You care or you don't. You fully invest, or you're always just looking for an excuse to write us off. Russell Bloody Martin. These guys, Russell Bloody Martin, I can't believe that. Following last week's, everybody get on board. These guys put £75 million into buying us. They're putting up £20 million via a share issue that's got, I think, I've subsequently found out it's going to be their money too. So it's as close to the identikit kind of safe-ish foreign investment takeover you can get these days. It's bigger than all the others in Scotland. Right now, and it's dwarfed by the bigger English versions, but it bears all the hallmarks and essential ingredients, and it obviously is the brother of the one which steadily but spectacularly improved Leeds United over the last couple of seasons. We'll find out soon enough if it's going to be the small brother or the big brother, the little brother or the big brother of that Leeds United takeover, but this was always the only way we could get back to dominance before like the 2030s. But if we're only positive about Rangers now that this has happened, that's not good enough. If your interest in Rangers only became loving on Friday, yeah, you can fuck off. And if you have zero reservations about, for example, Red Bull naming rights at Ibrox, you can fuck off. You can fuck off to the megastore and buy all 3 kits for you, your wife, and your kids, and only drink at New Edmiston House and help finance the club you wouldn't have if it wasn't for the punters and directors whose love and patronage of the club over the last decade never faltered. If you didn't come to visit us in the hospital, don't turn up now that we've won the lottery. They kind of make Rangers great again hats. I know it's a laugh, isn't it? That stuff. But yeah, Trump's nothing to laugh about. So I hate even joking references to his racist finality. But there's a more direct and kind of concerning parallel in our supporters' attitudes, which is rewriting history to the point where nothing we don't like is true, and everything we want we should have it here now, or we're going to trash the joint. So we have a different kind of manager each season, and things are just going to get worse. That's if that attitude is maintained. Now we have a real opportunity for success. We can afford to be real and truthful with ourselves, and we need to be if we're to keep healthy, to kick on a healthy long-term fashion. I genuinely like the idea that Kavanagh and Marath, as a statement said on Friday at one point, some of their actions at Leeds United also indicate they're genuinely into this for a sense of community, and no doubt they will enjoy us all, kind of parting our butt cheeks for them right now. But they could have bought that. They could have bought that sense of community, that gratitude from a local community, and I've already used sport to buy it in terms of Marath at their home in the US, the community where they'll actually live for most of their life. Leopards never change their spots just because they don't own a cheapest chips chain of British shopping centre sports shops or a fleet of Greenock service buses. It doesn't mean that the new consortium is not guided by exactly the same overarching and underpinning motivation: profit. They want to make that profit in a way Rangers can sustain when they've gone. That's great. But Sir David Murray filled in the corners, he got us the big screens, he got us the club deck, he turned the stadium from the horrible multicoloured seats to just the all blue seats, which made it look absolutely magnificent. He got to another European final, and he made 9 in a row, a Rangers record as much as a Celtic record. And the second things changed for him on the personal business front, we changed the training centre's name back to Auchenhowie, and everybody was more than willing to talk about how, we loved Gaza and we loved Loudrup and but we should never ever again admit that it was David Murray that brought us all those glory years. Now you've got a chance to do that with our latest saviours. Take the chance, take an eschew neurosis, make your love for Rangers real, declare it. Separate it from the owners. Don't get that hubris t-shirt ready to put over the new Umbro home kit because you're just far too on board with an ownership which just 4 days later, 5 days later, had you want to trash the joint. Aye, sorry folks, that's enough from me. I think it's been a very emotional. I think that's what it is. It's just a reaction to the emotion. When I say that's enough from me, that means there's probably another 20 minutes to go. What have you been doing last week? So we're watching the 3 European club finals. That's Hakimi scored for Paris Saint-Germain the other night, and El Arzuli, he scored for Real Betis in the Conference League final against Chelsea. Remember El Kabi, who scored against us for Olympiacos, he scored the only goal of last season's Conference League final. So I get, and plus they've got Igaman as well. I'd be getting money on Morocco, maybe each way bet for this World Cup next. Imagine a Muslim country won the World Cup in Donald Trump's USA. That'd be fine. Obviously, I've been kind of doing the warm down. It's the warm down from that domestic season just past is continuing. I'm going to go to Scotland game tomorrow night, and I'll therefore complete. It's £40. Iceland. It's the third time I've seen them at Hampden. I think I've played them 4 times in all at Hampden, and we will have by tomorrow night. And this is the third time. The last time I saw them, at least it was a World Cup qualifier, and that was when Barry did his 2s up when it all went wrong for him. I'm glad it's quite a thing. It's quite cathartic. It's quite a bookending to go back to that game, knowing that Barry's now back to being. Well, I know there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, a lot of people unhappy the way he's talking to the papers and all that, using his job to write a daily record column for himself or others, whatever. But it's a nice bookending in that sense. But it's £40. £40 to see. Do you know the Republic of Ireland are playing Senegal? This isn't even the Nations League, because the Nations League is getting played just now. In Germany last summer they were out in a quarter final, a major finals, and this at home in this year. Not even a year later, they're going out in the semi-finals last night to Portugal in Munich. The Vitinho and that back in the same pitch we're playing on Saturday night. It's quite. And then Ronaldo scoring a goal. 40-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo getting his 137th international goal. Things like that help you kind of warm down. But it's no the Nations League anymore for Scotland. We could have had MD for a friendly, or just get somebody non-European. The Republic of Ireland are playing Senegal, and we're playing bloody. It's nothing against Iceland, perfectly. But they must be sick of the sight of us as well. Paris Saint-Germain doing the business last week. I think it was the second goal, the one that they scored, was Inter Milan, who are the kind of historic international byword for defensive certainty, Internazionale of Milan, and they're about to usher the ball out for a corner, for an Inter corner, and from that, PSG just walk the ball up the park and score a second goal against them. Inter were a team that you couldn't have a counter attack. They used to operate on the counter-attack. I know they didn't invent Catenaccio, but they perfected it. They made it famous or infamous, what have you. So it was quite a moment. And it's the age of the sports washer. That was quite a thing to watch last week. But I've been doing the watching the films, and I told you last week about how I'd watched 3. I can't random or dotted about of different years. 70s, 80s, and was a 90s job as well that I'd watched. 2016 was from 3 different decades completely that I'd failed to see at any point in my life. So I watched them all within the space of a week, and every single one of them featured a cathartic moment with these white porcelain sinks, people washing their face, getting ice or cold water on their face, a white porcelain classic kind of bathroom sink. I watched Chicago. It's a musical, basically. A movie version of a well-known Broadway musical. And all it is, the first kind of half hour of it, endless. There's prison scenes and all that, but it's all sinks, people at these white porcelain sinks washing their faces and doing up their makeup and splashing. I don't know. That must be the secret to an Oscar-winning movie, best movie at the Oscars. Look out for that. Dave King was on Sky, looking like he was in a prison cell. That was quite a thing. I don't know if we're going to hear more from Dave now that he's sold his shares or less now. He doesn't have any shares left to sell. Who knows? But it was a bit of a cathartic indicator of a new dawn as anything else over the last few days that Dave King is now, a Rangers supporter, obviously, if he's not watching Liverpool on the outside, but it must have been his home in South Africa. He was talking from, and he had the, whatever it is, under the laptop or whatever underneath him, and up behind him, you see it was a kind of high window. It saw the exposed brick effect, and there's a big high window which must be like 8 feet up to show that he's got a massive house, suppose. But it just seemed it was actually, he was in the jail. So I thought for a second it was it all going wrong for Dave. We're in all the committees now. That's quite good. I like that. Jamie Vardy. It was rumoured that Jamie Vardy was going to be coming to Rangers. I mean, I don't know why he would go to us versus United States or Saudi Arabia. He can make much more money over there, and I would absolutely love it. And it'd be absolutely wrong. I would hate it. I would hate what it says about our planning under the new regime if we were to sign Jamie Vardy. Excuse me, but I would probably go to the airport and have him kind of sign my boobs, while also shouting, "I thought we were future-proofing. Why are you here? I love you, Jamie. Why are you here?" But no, the thing for me, it's all about Russell Martin's style, isn't it? Also, Russell Martin's style. His playing career, it means I say, can be totally discounted. It was a bad time for him. It was a bad time for the club. But one of the things I noticed about PSG winning the Champions League, say, was getting rid of Neymar, Mbappe, and Messi helped him become a team. It just reminded me of Jock Wallace. Jock Wallace, when he sold 2 Rangers players in the 70s before we started winning the trebles. He won the 2 trebles in 3 seasons. He said, "I've sold 2 stars, but I've inherited a team." Because these guys were trouble. These guys were trouble in the dressing room. They were causing disharmony, and who were they? It was Colin Steen and Willie Johnston, the guys who, like the troublemakers we had on the park that night, fighting the evil fascists of the Guardia Civil. That's how Rangers win European trophies. It was the guys that scored in that Cup Winners' Cup final. Another European final being won. And, Jock Wallace had to get rid of them to end up making Rangers stable enough in the domestic front. And it's that whole thing at Rangers which I don't like. It seems to be the league versus Europe. It seems to be doing well domestically versus doing well in Europe. You can't have both, apparently. But the next Ranger to score in a European final is one Joe Aribo. Joe Aribo, also in Spain. And he, of course, went to Southampton, where he came under the tutelage of one Russell Martin. So maybe there's a chance he's going to come to the club. And we were hearing stories last week in the various podcasts I watched, much better than this one of mine, talking about Leeds United selling 3 fan favourite players. I don't know who they were, to bring in 6 players, who were worth, the transfer, I nearly said worth less, but they were worth less money than the 3 that they'd sold. I think these 6 players put together, but it worked better for Leeds. The Parag Marath model of ownership so far seems to see, and everything you hear from Leeds United fans under the kind of 49ers Enterprises influence says that they'll make decisions that are underwhelming at best. Sometimes the fans will be upset about it, but in the long term it works out. This is Moneyball. Hello. We are the Billy Beals, the Billy Beans. This is what we wanted. This is the way of doing these things. I think everybody needs to kind of get on board. We all went to get on board last Friday. We'll stay on board now that it's Russell Martin. It's a slightly underwhelming decision, but I think it's absolutely fine. Possession style. He's been Andrea Di Pietro della Gondola. Just like his father wasn't gonna go too far. He said to him, "Papa, what can I do?" He said, "Change that massive name to what? Palladio." So he went away and invented neoclassical style. Built the kind of buildings we hadn't seen for a while. But that's no the reason for his architectural fame. It's 'cause he changed to a teensy weensy memorable name. Isn't it? That's what I mean. Edson Arantes do Nascimento. Who's had Edson Arantes do Nascimento? The minute he changed his name to Pele, what a player. Just the best player in the world. Palladio, crap architect. You know, when he was called Andrea Di Pietro della Gondola, changed it to Palladio, Andrea Palladio. That's it. Suddenly, bang! Everybody thinks he's a fantastic architect. That's how you do it, isn't it? TikiTaka. If you know what TikiTaka means, if you understand possession football, that means you'll be a great manager. That means you'll be a great manager. Of course it doesn't, does it? Of course it doesn't. That's a nonsense rhyme that I was just saying there. I think it's been talked about. This is a big fear about Russell Martin. Everybody keeps he's into possession football, and he's talking about it at the press conference today. But he said he does adapt his style, and everybody's so scared. He's just a tiki-taka possession football. Oh no, lots of possession, but not going anywhere. Oh no, he's an ideologue. We don't want one of them on board. And I think maybe the Rangers Review this week or somebody else. So many podcasts this week. It might have been Heart and Hand. Sorry if I've got this wrong. I think it was Joshua Barry, but I might be wrong. Was saying it's becoming more common knowledge these days. Even Pep Guardiola. It's a Pep Guardiola brought tiki-taka, and if it was over a decade ago, and it reaped fantastic dividends. The two Champions Leagues, 2009, 2011, and a really memorable style of football. But even Pep Guardiola has moved on from tiki-taka. He got a big, hairy, ugly centre forward, literally, for Manchester City last season because he needed somebody to score goals with his new style. Needed a straightforward. They couldn't just spin everybody dizzy with total rhythmic, kind of mesmerising possession to the point where the defence just fell over and you walked the ball into the back of net like you did at Barcelona. Couldn't do that anymore. So I remember Martin Keown years ago. It was match of the day 2 or something. I'm sure it was maybe a midweek match of the day. I think it might have been Queen's Park Rangers. Warburton's Queen's Park Rangers? I don't know. He was talking about Queen's Park Rangers anyway, in the top flight, I think. And it was somebody saying, I think they'd drawn the game 0-0 or something. It was at Loftus Road. And the anchor, be it Charpers or whoever, said, no, it's attractive possession football they're playing at QPR just now. He's like, is it? Is it? It's like watching paint dry. It's all very well, saying that the top end of the game, Pep Guardiola is playing tiki-taka, playing possession football, but this isn't the top end of the game. It's just like it's possession for possession's sake, and that's what we're all worried about. We're all worried. We'll keep it architecture. The Chicago style, Helmut Jan. Helmut Jan was member number 8 of the Chicago 7. How postmodern. How very postmodern. A gang of architects who called themselves the Chicago 7. And then Helmut Jan from Germany, but he loved the architecture in Chicago. Who doesn't? He ends up going over there and becoming and making a name for himself. And he becomes artist number 8. And it was. They said they were sick not of Mies van der Rohe. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. He's one of the greatest architects of all time. After Palladio, it was the modernist style. He says it wasn't him they were sick of. It wasn't him they were attacking. He's the boss of Chicago architecture. It was all his acolytes, all his followers, who had kind of scraped like what Coldplay are to Radiohead. They'd kind of scraped the top off their misunderstanding of the theory and what they thought made his buildings great. Their copies just didn't have the same integrity, didn't have the same quality. And I think the quote from the Chicago 7 was it was getting to the point in the kind of late 70s that you were getting off an aeroplane in an American city and not knowing what city it was. I mean, they did obviously because they'd put the tickets and all that, and they had a big thing, the big sign telling you the name of the airport they were putting. But it's like basically the buildings all looked the same because there was so many folk copying the Mies van der Rohe style, just a kind of rectilinear and glass walling and all that kind of thing. But it was this misunderstanding. So they started developing postmodernism. And if anybody tries to tell you that they understand what postmodern means, they're lying. Nobody knows really what it means. And I love modernist architecture. I love modernist. I'm pointing up to my Ernest Hemingway books and Ford Madox Ford and all that. I love modernist stuff, but I also love lots of postmodern literature, but postmodern architecture. And there's that bit in Heat, isn't there, where Vincent Hanna goes into, he discovers it's his third marriage, so he's living with Justine, his third wife, on the downslope of their third marriage, at her ex-husband's house. And her ex-husband was an architect. So Vincent, of course, is robbery homicide detective, and he comes home from a night shift, and there's Justine, his wife, serving up breakfast to Ralph, who's played by Xander Barkley. Xander Barkley is the only guy who's in Heat, the magisterial movie that is Heat, who was also in LA Takedown, which is the TV movie kind of blueprint for Heat. It was the TV movie version that was made in 6 weeks, whereas Heat was made in 6 months. And Xander Barkley's the only actor that's in both versions. And in LA Takedown, he plays Waingro, the most evil character in all of Heat. And in Heat, he plays Ralph, the most innocent, kind of doesn't know he's just slept with a married woman. And her husband's just turned up and he's got guns on him because he's a robbery homicide detective. He's the most kind of harmless character in the whole of Heat, just showing the difference between the two films. But in Vincent Hanna's, it turns out Ralph, the only thing Vincent Hanna's got in that house that's his is his portable television, and Ralph's sitting watching his portable television while Justine makes some breakfast, and he's like, "Oh, I'm mad, Ralph. I'm very, you can ball my wife if you want to, and you can hang around here in her ex-husband's dead tech postmodernistic bullshit house if you want to, but you do not get to watch my fucking television." And he takes away the television set. He's just telling her he doesn't really care, but it's her ex-husband's dead tech postmodernistic bullshit house, and it is, and you can see through there's a bit where Justine's doing her makeup before going out at night, and in the mirror that's part of the fabric of the house that she's got to do, her actual vanity mirror is like she'd need to be a Modigliani model to get her face in there. It's so kind of rectilinear and just doesn't work at all. But this is there's a lots of buildings. If you're my age, the kind of 80s, it was a total nightmare for these buildings being everywhere. They were attacking modernism. The Chicago 7 say they weren't attacking Mies van der Rohe, they weren't attacking, but they were. And it was bullshit. But the buildings they produced were awful. Just like, we'll put holes in the side of it. Well, there should be a wall. We're having a laugh. We're not checking it. It's awful. It's really brutal to watch. No, the Pompidou Centre, as Paul Caff says, the Pompidou Centre. Is it functionalist dreamscape, postmodern eyesore? You decide. But it's it's really striking because it's in a massive space and there's been a lot of money thrown at it. But it's awful. It's an absolute mess, and that's what happens if you are too pro or anti any kind of philosophy. It's just shit. If you go into it knowing the buzzwords but not really understanding when and how to employ how to make it work, then it'll just be a disaster. And if you go in there hating it and totally, I don't want to do that, I'm going to be anti that, you just end up making a different kind of mess. TikiTaka, it goes the rectilinear glass sheet walls of Mies van der Rohe, but TikiTaka is a misunderstanding of big money players being used really well. It's not a kind of blueprint. It's not something that's readily translatable to all clubs. TikiTaka is, I know Barcelona time we talk about homegrown players that making it kind of organic and all that. They were all, even the ones that were homegrown, were on like £100 million release clauses. This is back in like 2006, 2007, 2008. But Zlatan Ibrahimovic was part of bringing around the TikiTaka era. Obviously, Messi, most famous of all, is Rosario, Argentina, that Messi comes from, despite how long he'd been in Catalonia. But it wasn't homegrown. No, that it was just really, really expensive. Lots of players who were, like Barcelona, even if it is homegrown talent, they had crowds of 120,000, through the 70s and for some of the 70s, certainly all through the 80s and into the 90s, and had a massive stadium, and they're the biggest or second biggest club in the world at any point in time. Just massive amounts of money coming in to help them develop talent in a particular way. There was nothing about it that was particularly, it was commendable, but it wasn't artisanal as they made it out. He just had really, really world-class players at his disposal, and what he did there was, all football managers are trying to make a whole that is better than the sum of the parts. But this was a team who would have won Champions Leagues anyway without playing in that style under Guardiola. He just found a way to take it up a notch, get that again, make more from the whole. But the sum of the parts, but the sum of the parts was enough to be winning Champions Leagues. He just found a way to do a more entertaining type of football, and it really was. It's phenomenal to watch. It was a revolution. It was just a kind of a tweak on total football. It was brought by Rinus Michels, and then Louis van Gaal had been there, and he'd played alongside Ronald Koeman, and Johan Cruyff was his kind of guru. It's a rich club's expensive plaything, TikiTaka, and so many teams were going about trying to do that. They didn't have the resources, didn't have the players, and it just became this boring side-to-side football. He was asked about this today, was Russell Martin, and he wanted the question. He knows it's a criticism. He knows it's an attitude towards him, and he says that he hasn't played the same kind of football at any of the three clubs he's been in charge of. Now, to me, he got the Swansea job. Swansea have, I think, like Brendan Rodgers, who's been Swansea manager. That's another thing. While I'm on the subject, there's a slagging for Russell Martin. If I called him Chris Martin, sorry, I'm going to keep doing that. There's a slagging for Russell Martin because his last game in charge of Southampton was a 5-0 doing by Spurs. I think they were 5-0 down at half time, and it stayed 5-0. I think the last game that Steven Gerrard had as a player was a 6-1 doing at Stoke City, and that, although that wasn't Brendan Rodgers' last game as a manager, it meant he finished a season. He became the first Liverpool manager since the 50s to finish 3 straight seasons without a trophy. So Brendan Rodgers was the manager when it was kind of October the following season when he was actually given his jotters, Rodgers, but he had a bit of a doing at Stoke City there. So I don't really a 5-goal doing. So don't read too much into that. But he said he's got his style. He's adaptable. He's altered styles at all three previous clubs he's been at. Swansea City, as I say, were a club who were doing that thing of wanting a particular type of manager to play a particular type of football for years on end. It was an early version of the model we're trying to put in place now, where the head coach can change but the style won't. And Russell Martin was a guy, his work at MK Dons were right in the bottom half of, was at League One, and Swansea get him into, was at the Championship, and they go from to like 15th place and up to 10th place or something like that, but playing a lovely style of football. Wasn't a lot of money about, and then that's what attracted Southampton to him as well. They felt they had the players there that would suit his style. So, but he did change, and he says his style now is courage and intensity. He wants his players to be intense. They're going to have to work really hard to get a hold of the ball. Then he wants them to have the courage to be creative when they're in possession of the ball, when they're in the opposition half, when they're in the final third of the park. He just emphasised hard work constantly throughout this press conference today. He also emphasised, and I think it was mentioned by Patrick Stewart was there, the chief executive, and also Kevin Thelwell, the sporting director, this stuff about players. I felt as if everybody was mentioning it, or has been mentioning it, how we can develop young players, how we can bring in players and make them better. So it's almost like if he doesn't win the league, at least we're going to be able to finance another go at winning the league through the players, the value of our players, the value of our playing squad is going to go up under Russell Martin, who seems to be, by all accounts, a great manager. So he can talk the talk of structures and models and philosophies, which would have helped him breeze through the interviews with Stewart and Thelwell, and everything to say is about the development of young players. Folks, I'm maybe going round in circles here. It's been a kind of a beautifully underwhelming day after a nightmarishly overwhelming Friday last week. But asked about I saw the BBC Scotland reporting Scotland tonight. It's Chris McLaughlin standing up in that balcony at New Edmiston House, from which another bald man, who was also on reporting Scotland for about 2 seconds, Philip Clement, had vibrantly shook the League Cup trophy last season, or season before last. He's up there tonight talking about how he's only got to, it's the 2nd of August that the season starts, and the Champions League qualifiers are going to be in July, and it's the same for everybody. The season's got to start at some point. I don't know. Suddenly, he's got no time. He's got to hit the ground running. And when he was asked about this today, Russell Martin said we need to win early. We need to find a way to win while developing, and he had to do that at Southampton. We had to win amongst a lot of change, and he said it's exciting times ahead, rather than making us believe it. But hey, Pittsburgh Steelers, Chuck, no, it's not about how you come across in press conferences. It's about what you actually do with the players on the park. He's not played in European competitions. I don't think has he ever played in Europe. I don't know if he's played in European competitions as a player on that time at Norwich City. I don't know if they qualified for Europe at that point. This time I don't think so. That was back in the 90s. He hasn't managed in European competition. That scares me. But the vast majority of our support seem to think that it's a straightforward exchange. And it's a lot of Rangers history would tell you that it is, perhaps with the exception of 92, 93. A lot of our supporters want us to be out of Europe because they think that means we're going to do well domestically. They don't want European quarter-finals. They think domestic dominance is what counts for more. They're wrong, and it breaks my heart. But this is it. The kind of self-harming mindset sometimes comes along because, I don't know, we're just desperate. We're desperate for domestic success. It's so desperate that we start writing off our European success. The minute we get domestic success, we're going to want European success back. Don't worry about it. So just take any success you can. But no, we can't complain about the new head coach in that respect because he's all about domestic football. It's all he's ever managed teams in, and this is what we wanted. So I don't get why everybody's so unhappy. My name's Alec Anderson. I don't want to say goodbye for the summer, knowing the love we'll miss. Oh, let us make a pledge to meet in September and seal it with a kiss. I can make these pods longer because you've got longer to watch them. There's less happening that's podable about. But when I say September, of course, the draw is going to be on the 18th of June to find out who we're going to get in that second qualifying round of the Champions League, which is going to be played a month later, the 22nd or 23rd of July. And of course, the players will go out their training facility. We'll have friendlies to play. It's not going to be September the next time I've got a pod out there. But I think after this, we all need a few days, break. So one thing I would say before I go is Heat. I was talking about Vincent Hanna and Heat slagging the dead tech postmodernistic bullshit house that he gets Ralph in, but in Heat 2, which is I don't want to see turned into a film. Michael Mann can't seem to get the funding for the film, but I've got the book here, Heat 2, and it's a terrible book. But what I suddenly remembered was, just sorry if I go a bit off here, when Vincent Hanna, the young Vincent Hanna, this is the days before the events of Heat, younger man, he starts in Chicago. Chapter 12 of Heat 2, through the shears in the balcony window, the headlights down on Lakeshore Drive cast a dreamy light. Vincent Hanna stands up from the king-size bed. He lifts a tumbler of scotch from the nightstand where it sits beside his badge, his duty weapon, blah de blah, de blah de blah, de blah de blah de blah de blah. It's Lakeshore Drive. It's a Lakeshore Drive, Chicago apartment. Let me just show you. I've got a book on Chicago architecture. I went to Chicago, and you got to do the architectural thing. You got to do the architectural tour and all that, and see it in the water. That's Lakeshore Drive there. So let's see. That's the buildings there. They're absolutely magical. That's Mies van der Rohe, Lakeshore Drive, Mies van der Rohe. And he gets called away from this. It's a prostitute, a sex worker that he's with at the time, and he gets called away from there to go and attend. Anyway, that's it. That's Lakeshore Drive. That's the. This was the Helmut Jan, number 8 of the Chicago 7. He did that kind of abomination there. That's with the Illinois Council or something like Illinois State Workers place, but it became the James R. Thompson Centre. It's now the headquarters of Google. They're spending about $250 million refurbing it, but he's in Lakeshore Drive. Vincent Hanna, he's in Mies van der. He's basically with somebody in a Mies van der Rohe building. I know that one's got a balcony, but he's in amongst all the Mies van der Rohe buildings on Lakeshore Drive, which I've walked. I've went to Chicago and I walked them. That's absolutely beautiful. And he gets called away to go to a robbery, a breaking and entry thing at Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park, Chicago. There's a Lincoln Park, Chicago, an actual park in Chicago called Lincoln Park, and that's Heat Suit. And I don't really know what point I'm trying to make, but what originals will be left? He goes to see, he goes in and he sees his wife in Heat 1. It's Justine. She's got this guy Ralph in there, and it's played by Xander Bartley. Ralph, who's the only guy who's in both Heat and LA Takedown. And I wonder what originals will be left in our squad come August the 2nd when the season starts. But we don't care about Europe. It doesn't matter if we're out of Europe by that point in time. I say September. I say it's the summer's going to be sealed with a kiss. Happy new head coach, folks. Just give us a wee. No, just come on.